Sup guys, spoiler alert. They tried to assassinate the heir of the Demon King, but guess what? They failed. Right from birth, he could see spirits with his dead man's eyes. Upon his death, he used a forbidden spell to reincarnate into the body of a boy in a righteous sect. From there, he combined his newfound abilities with his demonic powers. Now, let's dive into the story. In the Heavenly Demon Cult, within the Grand Heavenly Demon Palace, the Demon King lay ill. The court physician had come to examine him, hoping to determine if his sickness could be cured. However, after a thorough examination, the physician regretfully informed the court heir that the sickness was beyond his ability to treat. Even the rare medicine brought for the occasion was of no help. It turned out that the Demon King was suffering from energy deviation, a condition not easily curable. The cult heir blamed himself, calling himself a half-baked pupil with a shattered lower core. His internal chi was unstable, rendering him incapable of practicing martial arts. Instead, he mastered mystic arts and rose to the esteemed position of the cult heir of the Heavenly Demon Cult, all to repay his master's kindness. Yet despite his efforts, he felt he had failed his master. Frustrated and burdened, he left the room, muttering that even the expensive medicine he brought was useless. The cult heir is Woonwee, and he's our MC. As he walked through the halls, he wondered where he could possibly find a cure for the Demon King. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts, calling out, "It's been a while." It was none other than the vice cult leader, Chun Hajin. He asked how Woonwee had been during his absence. Woonwee responded sarcastically, noting that Hajin's tour of the land must have been extensive. Hajin brushed off the comment, explaining that with both the Demon King and the cult heir unable to perform their duties, it fell upon him as the vice cult leader to take charge. After this brief exchange, the two parted ways. As Woonwee walked away, he muttered to himself sarcastically, "He's grateful for his efforts, indeed." Later, in his chambers, the MC sat with a cup of tea, pondering. He suspected Chun Hajin's tour wasn't as innocent as it seemed. Everything about him reeked of suspicion. Woonwee resolved to act before Hajin could. However, as he sipped his tea, a sudden realization hit him: it was poisoned. Blood dripped from his lips as he cursed. So this is why the tea was such a killer drink. At that moment, assassins appeared from the shadows, dropping into the room. One yelled, "Attack!" They swarmed our MC like flies to mangoes. Despite his weakened state, Woonwee smirked. Even if they bring him poisoned liquor, they dare to fight him in his own chambers? He sneered. Using his illusion arts, he vanished, reappearing behind the assassins. Then he told them that if they wanted to kill him, they should have been better prepared, he taunted. Enraged, the assassins charged, but Woonwee unleashed his Thousand Chains demonic art, trapping them instantly. And bang, they were all killed in an instant. As the dust settled, the vice cult leader Chun Hajin, along with the elders, entered the chamber. Without turning, Woonwee addressed them. "So, this is all you've got after months of plotting?" He turned to face them, with an unshaken smirk. Chun Hajin's expression soured as Woonwee continued, "He's disappointed. Is this the best plan they could muster to take him down?" Despite the poison weakening him, our MC laughed mockingly. Chun Hajin, visibly frustrated, wondered how Woonwee could still stand after taking such deadly poison. He yelled, "This guy's a monster!" Woonwee, wiping the blood from his lips, muttered to himself that if his body was in better condition, he'd have already left a hole in Hajin's head. Chun Hajin declared that neither he nor the elders would allow an orphan with a broken core to become the next demon leader. "Even the superiors have given their blessing to eliminate you," he sneered. Woonwee chuckled darkly. It's pitiful that elders of their stature would stoop to attack a mere brat in group, even after poisoning him. His words stung Hajin, who angrily retorted, "If he had simply fulfilled his role as cult heir, none of this would have happened." Interrupting him, Woonwee shouted, "Shut up! Who's behind all this? Who sent him? Was it the master of black spirits? Or definitely someone outside the demon cult?" Chun Hajin faltered, shocked that Woonwee had figured out the conspiracy. He stammered, denying any external involvement, but our MC wasn't convinced. He said that Hajin lacked the guts for this. "It must be someone higher up." Woonwee declared that they've sold the demon court to outsiders, haven't they? That must also be why the Heavenly Demon King lies in such condition. Chun Hajin, enraged, launched a rusted divine claw attack, slamming our MC into the wall. Holding Woonwee by the neck, he hissed, no matter how much he disliked him, they were still trained under the same master. And since he's still the active leader of the Heavenly Divine Cult, so he will end his life with his own hands. But with a smile, our MC said Chun Ha-jin should do better than this. He doesn't really need to keep up this facade. No need to pretend he's trying to kill Woonwee just because he failed in his duty. As the heir of the demon cults, Woonwee told Ha-jin, of course, his lack of wits is why he's a puppet of outer forces. All this goading, all this provocation, it was intentional. Woonwee knew what he was doing. The elders of the demon court stood on edge, exchanging nervous glances, wondering what on earth was going on. Woonwee stood there, unbothered, smirking like he'd planned this whole fiasco from the start. Finally, our MC addressed them. They've endured him for so long, yet they still don't know. If they wanted to kill him, they should have remembered this one thing, the tricks he have up his sleeve. And bang! As cliché as it sounds, Woonwee pulled out a sword from his pocket. Not just any sword, it was the demon dragon's sword. Ha-jin tried to touch it, but the mere force sent him flying backward like a leaf caught in a storm. He gawked, realizing Woonwee had already amassed an unimaginable amount of mystic power. Then the thought struck him. Could it be that Woonwee is planning to kill all of them? As Ha-jin tried to gather himself, our MC calmly declared that he has poured all his mystic power into the demon dragon sword. This sword carries the will of the first heavenly demon king. The elders froze. Woonwee continued. While they've been attacking him, he'd been busy gathering every ounce of energy he needed into the blade. Realizing the impending doom, one elder screamed, "Defensive formation, now! Use your inner energy or we're all dead." But it was too late. The demon dragon sword lit up, and with one swift motion, Woonwee unleashed the soul-combusting hellflame arts. And bang! In an instant, everything was obliterated, the entire area, the building, the dragon statues, everything. Even as they were being annihilated, the elders cursed, calling him a bastard. Until the end, Woonwee still managed to remain a pain in the ass. As the dust settled, our MC, lying amidst the rubble, muttered that no matter how pitiful his life has been, he didn't think he'd go out like this, along with the betrayers. This moment triggered a memory in Woonwee. Back when he was a frail, skinny kid, constantly bullied by the others in his village because he claims he could see ghosts. Even Broomstick would mock him for his unnaturally thin legs. One boy in particular, the ringleader, had shouted, "Look at him! An orphan with a broken lower core." What a joke. Our MC endured it for a while, but one day, he snapped. Bloodlust in his eyes, he picked up a rock and smashed it against the bully's head. Of course, this only made things worse. They chased him, vowing revenge. As he hid, gasping for breath, our MC muttered, "These idiots never know when to quit. Just like these spirits that keep following him, can't they all just piss off already?" Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. A man, draped in expensive robes and carrying an equally lavish sword, appeared. Our MC froze. He hadn't sensed this man at all. Assuming the man was after his cursed eyes, our MC didn't hesitate to offer them. He said, "Take them, boil them, pull them out, I don't care. They're yours." The man didn't laugh or scoff. Instead, he placed his coat over our MC's shoulders and said, "His eyes aren't cursed. They're a blessing." This was the first time anyone had spoken to him with kindness. The man explained that our MC had a blessed upper energy core and the potential to achieve greatness. Still skeptical, our MC hesitated, but the warmth in those words stayed with him. When the man asked if he would follow him, the boy nodded. Then the man asked for his name. Our MC simply replied, "He don't have one." The man then named him Woonwee, commemorating the start of his new life. From that day forward, Woonwee had a reason to live. Back in the present, Woonwee lay dying, his blood pooling beneath him, his strength fading. His body was beyond repair. He muttered, "He can't die here. Not like this. It's too pitiful." Realizing he had no choice, he decided to invoke the forbidden arts of Zorus, the primordial divine technique. The primordial divine will of reincarnation is the forbidden art used by ancient practitioners to overcome death by transferring their soul to another person's body. Even if the transfer is successful, they are destined to live a short life, due to the body's rejection of the new soul. Now, after circulating the remaining mystic energy from his body to activate the arts, although not sure of its success, he left it to the heavens. As the reincarnation process continues, he hopes his master will be safe until his return. He promises he will surely find his master no matter the body he enter, but that's if the reincarnation process actually works. After a while, my cameraman's view was filled with darkness, but suddenly, things started to clear. In the next scene, a boy is seen being beaten. A lady yells at him, reminding him that as the son of a concubine, he should keep laying low and stop trying to visit his father. The boy, lying on the ground, mumbles to himself that his whole body feels numb, and waking up to the sound of beating is the worst. It turns out that our MC, Yon Woonwi, is now the host of the body. The reincarnation process had worked successfully, but when he opened his eyes, he couldn't believe what he saw. The woman called out his name, Tang Woonwi, and asked him if he was listening to her corrections. How long would he continue lying on the floor? She ordered him to get up immediately. Our MC, surprised, found it ironic that this new body shared the same name as him, but the only difference is their surname. The woman, seeing he wasn't responding, threatened to hit him. And with a bang, Woonwi blocked her arm. With a shift in aura, he told her straight-faced, "Her breath stinks. Can she point her face somewhere else?" She was shocked. This was the first time the Woonwi she knew had ever talked back. Her face twisted with anger. How dare he call her an old hag? She fumed, storming out of the room and telling him not to even dream of leaving until he understood his mistake. Finally, with some peace and quiet, Woonwi sat down, letting out a sigh. He began reflecting on how the reincarnation process went. As he sat, after images of the body's memories flooded his mind. According to the remaining ego of this body, that woman who just left was his stepmother. Our MC recalled that the primordial divine will of reincarnation only works on bodies that have just died or are about to die. That means the actual owner of this body will soon die. Woonwi couldn't believe it. His stepmother had beaten him to the brink of death. It seemed his old life was pitiful, but this Tang Woonwi's life was even worse. He touched the body and thought, this body is barely trained and in bad health. That's probably why the real owner died. But there was something this body had that his previous one didn't. An additional lower energy core. In his first life, Woonwi only had an upper energy core, but now it's different. Woonwi, filled with determination, said to himself that if he can train this lower core and master martial arts, combined with the mystic arts in his dead man's eyes, he'll be able to control the dead and protect his master, the heavenly demon leader. He will show those bastards who backstabbed him and his master what it means to face death. In the Sichuan Tang clan, one of Muram's 6 great clans and the ruler of Sichuan, stands the Tempest Squad, the group that leads the Tang clan. Their leader, known as the Tempest Swordman, is Tang Hosan. He founded the Tempest Squad alongside the 9 Dragons Division, a powerful branch of the Tang clan. Tang Hosan had 3 heirs, 2 children with his legal wife, the first and third child, then 1 illegitimate child. This middle child was born out of wedlock, resulting from a mistake Tang Hosan made while drunk, when he slept with one of his servants. This middle child was none other than Woonwi, who had been reincarnated as the illegitimate child of the Tang clan. Even servants looked down on Tang Woonwi, but I guess it would be different now, since our mischievous MC has taken over the body. Now, one of the servants was scolding Woonwi, calling him out for talking back at the matriarch, and telling him to go beg for forgiveness. Lady Samyung ordered the servants not to bring any food to the White Pavilion, and now it looks like they'll all starve alongside Woonwi. But as the servant yapped, all our MC could think was that he couldn't believe even a servant was looking down on him. And bang, in an instant, before the servant could utter another word, Woonwi slapped him, sending him flying backward. The servant grumbled. He was just giving him some advice, right? Why slap him? With bloodlust in his eye, Woonwi stood and told the servant that if he kept acting this way, he'd be forced to teach him a lesson. Then he started hitting the servant until the man begged for mercy. The servant's name is Young Sam. After beating him black and blue, our MC sent him on a secret mission. With an evil grin, Woonwi hoped he would obey, and Young Sam quickly replied, "Of course, he'll do as he say." He bowed deeply and left. Afterward, Woonwi said to himself that he couldn't believe his hand was stinging just from hitting someone a few times. He thought about how weak this new body was. Not only is his body weak, he also has no allies within the Tang clan, making him all alone. It's partly due to his stepmom bullying him. However, there's another problem. The Tang clan energy in his current body is not compatible with his demonic energy from his past life. Since he mastered the heavenly demon arts, he can't use it alongside the Tang clan's orthodox techniques. But Woonwi believed he could adapt too, since many martial masters in the heavenly demon court must have come from the Tang clan, and they found a way to adapt from orthodox to demonic energy. Taking the memories of his previous life and implanting them into the upper meridian of this body would be a big task, so he decided to manifest it into the imaginary space. The only space capable of doing this was the heavenly demon cult's secret archive. After a few gestures, he opened the archive. Fortunately for him, the use of the primordial divine will reincarnation didn't cause him to lose much of his memories. In his current state, the most suitable cultivation method was the venom dragon cultivation technique. Years ago, after the martial group of the Tang clan specializing in poison was exiled, they joined the heavenly demon court. The venom dragon cultivation technique allowed them to master the poison arts of the demonic cults. Instead of using the typical demonic energy, they used poison energy, combining it with the Tang clan's martial techniques. Wunhui realized that if he used the venom dragon technique, no one would suspect him of using demonic energy, even though it was technically a demonic art. The issue was that embracing the poisonous energy would bring excruciating pain, and he would need to consume higher-level poison to replenish it. Now that he had unlocked his dead man eyes in this body, our MC felt a proud grin form on his face. Suddenly, he said aloud, "How long are you going to keep staring at me?" When my cameraman zoomed in, the figure turned out to be Chun Hajin, the one he killed in his previous life. Their souls were lingering around because when Wunhui used his 1,000 chains to bind them, their souls couldn't pass to the afterlife or reincarnate. Chun Hajin yelled that people always said Wunhui was crazy, but how dare he subject the vice cult leader of the heavenly demon court to such a miserable state? One of the elders yelled, "How does he still have this personality even after reincarnating?" With a smirk, our MC told them that if they were planning to kill him, they should have prepared for the consequences. With a snap, he pulled Hajin's chain, dragging the old man down to the ground. They already know his abilities, yet they foolishly rebelled against him, despite knowing what happens to those who try. The rest of the elders in spirit form trembled, and Wunhui taunted them, saying, "If they stay in these chains, they won't even be able to reincarnate." Ajin could see he wasn't bluffing and cursed. "Damn it all," he finally screamed out. Ajin told Wunhui, if it's information he wants, he will give it to him. Wunhui shook his head. "I don't need anything from you. You've got plenty of people who'll give him the info he needs." With a few more gestures, he turned Hajin's spirit into smoke and compressed it into an elixir. "This is the real power of the Phantom King," Wunhui said, holding it up as an example to the elders. He told them that this is what happens when they mess with him. Our MC told the rest of the elders that the elixir he made out of Hajin's spirit is filled with extreme resentment of the dead and is exponentially more vicious than most venom. But now, he will use it as his nutrition. Since he is also trying to learn dragon poison arts, the whole group of elders was shocked upon seeing this. As Wunhui swallowed the elixir, he began groaning in pain, but he stood firm. The elders exclaimed, "How is it possible for him to still be standing after eating such a deadly elixir?" After successfully absorbing it, he then told the rest of the elders, now that the vice cult leader has become a fatalizer for his venom cultivation technique, it's time for the rest of them to make a choice. He asked them if they would spill the truth behind who orchestrated the attacks against him and the demonic cult leader, or he would turn their spirits into elixirs. After a while, they all confessed and told him that they were just following the orders of an unknown organization. Upon hearing this, Wunhui became angry and was like, "So, the great elders of the heavenly demon cult are just following some unknown organization's orders?" They confirmed it and pleaded for mercy, saying that they weren't lying. "Please spare us," they begged, holding them in his palm. Wunhui thought to himself, an organization without a name? How is that possible? One of the elders, who he had begun turning into elixir, told Wunhui that the organization showed them things that made them comply with their demands. The heavenly demon cult is an unorthodox cult that worships the court leader as a god. For the elders to betray the heavenly demon and attack him, cult heir. This means the fear they felt from the heavenly demon was nothing compared to the fear instilled by this organization. He then recalled that there are people who have surpassed mankind and are trying to climb the Tower of Power. They are powerful demigods, causing national disasters wherever they go. Now, sitting with the spirit elixirs in hand, Wunhui realized that the mastermind behind the annihilation of the demon leader was far stronger than he had imagined. He had no luxury of time to adjust to the poison he absorbed in the spirit elixirs. He needed to get stronger quickly to figure out who plotted against them. 2 months later, in the matriarch's room, Miss Samyang smashed a ceramic cup against the wall, screaming at a servant. She demanded to know if he had given any food to that bastard, Wunhui. The servant replied that they would never dare go against her orders, but she yelled, Then how is Woonwee still alive and functioning normally after not being fed for 2 months? He should be crawling on the ground begging for her forgiveness by now. With anger, she smacked her face and ranted. There are rumors going around the estates that she maltreats Woonwee and committed treason. The clan leader, the patriarch, is coming soon. How can she face him with these rumors swirling? She sighed and asked the servant what Woonwee had requested. The servant stammered and said that Woonwee wanted information specifically regarding the unorthodox and demonic factions. Upon hearing this, the matriarch thought to herself, the Woonwee she knew would never care about such things. He's changed too much in 2 months. There must be someone controlling him. She thought again, if he impresses the patriarch during the visit, he could gain a position in the clan. No wonder there are so many people trying to control him. She then voiced her frustration, saying, such attention should be going to her daughter Kyujin and her son Yoon-chan. She yelled, that bastard Woonwee is trying to steal their glory. At that moment, a servant entered and announced that Master Yoon-chan was here. The matriarch calmed down. It seems her son has completed his isolated training. She told the servant to report immediately if he notices any changes about that bastard Woonwee. With a fearful smile, the servant replied, yes, I'll take my leave now. Yoon-chan entered, greeting his mother and asking how she had been. With a smile, she said she had been well and told him to sit down. She commended him for his hard work and isolated training and asked if he had gained the growth he desired. With a proud grin, Yoon-chan replied, although it wasn't much, he got closer to mastering hidden weapons. With a serious expression, he told his mother that he had heard about that bastard on his way here. So Woonwee still hasn't repented after disrespecting her? With a sigh of frustration, the matriarch said, she get headache just thinking about that bastard. She have no idea what he's up to. Before she could finish, Yoon-chan interrupted, saying he thinks Woonwee has someone backing him up. The matriarch was surprised that even her son thought the same. He continued, Woonwee doesn't have much inner energy and hasn't been eating or drinking for the past 2 months. There's no way he could have lasted without food. Someone must be secretly feeding him elixirs every night. The matriarch clenched her fists. That's what she thought too. She don't know which fool is supporting him, but whoever it is must be strong. She added, whoever is feeding him elixirs is making him appear far stronger than he actually is. And when the patriarch visits, that person will definitely show up. Yushan smiled evilly. No matter what the perpetrator does to aid Woonwee, how much can a bastard son really do? He added, if Woonwee causes any trouble, they'll just stop him, as loving siblings. In another scene, purple energy swirled around a room. It was Woonwee, practicing his demonic arts. The spirit spider told Woonwee that Miss Samyoung and her son were planning to make him join the security division of the Tang clan. With a sly smile, our MC thought to himself that they were just making things easier for him. After all, he had been looking for a way to join the security division, and now they were clearing the path for him. As they were talking, a voice called out to the young master, requesting his audience. Young Sam entered the room carrying a plate of tonic. Woonwee raised an eyebrow and asked what it was. The servant nervously replied that Miss Samyoung had sent the tonic for him. Woonwee frowned. Didn't the lady decree that he shouldn't be given anything to eat? The servant stammered and said that Miss Samyoung said that by now he would have finished reflecting on his sins. Since he've suffered so much, she wants him to replenish his energy with the tonic. Our MC chuckled inwardly. That old hag can't even play her tricks properly. They're so obvious. Still smiling, he told the servant to leave the tonic on the table. But the servant, looking visibly distressed, explained that Miss Samyoung ordered him to ensure Woonwee drinks it in his presence. Without hesitation, our MC boldly drank the tonic. As he sipped, he mused, the tonic is probably laced with lunacy poison, but thanks to his venom dragon cultivation technique, such poison is useless to him. His body is already brimming with poisons. To his surprise, the tonic actually felt energizing. He could even discern the ingredients, which seemed to transform the poison into a miraculous elixir. Consuming it in small amounts could restore energy, but such a large dose would infect the brain with toxicity. He sighed. How typical of a mischievous matriarch like Samyoung. Suddenly, Woonwee detected something else in the tonic, cinnabar poison. Upon seeing this, the spirit spider exclaimed, why would that woman give cinnabar poison to the young leader? She must be insane to combine sorcery with poison. Through telepathy, Woonwee told him to calm down and ordered him to spy on Miss Samyoung to uncover the identity of her sorcerer. The spirit spider saluted with a mental yes sir. and zipped out through the window. Finishing the tonic, Woonwee reflected, so, Miss Samyung is trying to drive him mad with lunacy poison, and even added sorcery to turn him into her puppet. How ambitious. He smirked, curious about the skill level of her sorcerer. Turning to the servant, Woonwee said, I've finished the tonic, why are you still here? The servant hesitated, then said that there's a martial arts master outside. He was sent by Mrs. Samyung. Stepping outside, he met a man who introduced himself as Tonggon, the fierce wind warrior. With the face of someone who hadn't slept in 5 days, Tonggon declared he'd been assigned to be Woonwee's martial arts master, though only for a few days. Our MC recognized the name. Tonggon was one of the top 5 masters in the world, and had been the largest contributor to the Tempest Squad during their frontline battles. But he was also infamous for his laziness and disdain for formal duties. Tonggon explained that Mrs. Samyung asked him to train Woonwee before the clan head's visit. Our MC couldn't help but marvel. The old hag never fails to surprise him. She's making it look like she's helping him by hiring a master of this caliber, but she's probably setting him up for a fall. Feigning politeness, Woonwee asked Tonggon what he would teach him. Tonggon casually demonstrated the Shadow Shroud Step, a movement technique that made the user appear in multiple places at once, like a shadow. Tonggon, still lounging as if the world moved too fast for him, added that he won't repeat himself, so Woonwee should watch closely. Tonggon said lazily that he've shown how it's done. Now just follow the footsteps he left on the ground. Woonwee stared at the footprints and thought, learning the Shadow Shroud Step will definitely be useful. This man truly lives up to his title as the fierce wind warrior, even if he's the laziest master he've ever met. Suddenly, Woonwee told him that he had learned it all. Tango was surprised. He couldn't believe it. With an unsure look, Tango said our MC didn't understand anything. The Shadow Shard Step technique was particularly challenging, taking Tempest Squad members 10 days just to learn the form. With a proud grin, Tonggon boasted that even a genius like himself had taken 5 days to master it. With a mocking expression, Woonwee gave a dry laugh, thinking, this guy's calling himself a genius for learning such an easy technique in 5 days? As Tango was about to leave, Woonwee stopped him and repeated that he had learned it all. Furious, Tango smacked his own forehead in frustration and reiterated that the technique wasn't something anyone could just see and copy. But as he kept yapping, Woonwee interrupted, suggesting they place a bet. If you don't believe me, he said, then let's bet on it. Woonwee raised the stakes. They'd wager 30 silver coins on whether he had truly mastered the Shadow Shard Step. Upon hearing the amount, Tango's face lit up with glee, until Woonwee added, from what he heard, their monthly wage is about 10 coins. That means Tonggon have to bet 3 months' wages to make it worthwhile. Clearing his throat, Tonggon tried to backpedal, and said that the Shadow Shard Step is a priceless martial art, born from the spirit of the Tang clan. Betting on it isn't very appropriate. But Woonwee, ever the villain, knew how to press his buttons. With an evil grin, he asked, what's the matter? Is Master Tonggon afraid? Tango's face turned red with fury. Woonwee mocked him further, laughing. The fierce wind warrior himself is scared to face a rookie like me, and he calls himself a genius, who took 5 days to learn an easy technique? Clearly, Master Tonggon is too scared to take him on. Now dead serious, Tonggon barked, hold it. Then he told Woonwee to prove he've mastered the Shadow Shroud Step. Before Tonggon could finish speaking, Woonwee began appearing in different places at once, moving so quickly that he even swiped Tango's money during the demonstration. The martial master stood frozen in shock, clutching his now empty coin pouch. Woonwee, holding the sack of coins, smirked and said, he'll take it as payment for the bet. Tonggon yelled, this is a scam. How did he learn the Shadow Step technique within minutes? Woonwee was like, how is it a scam? He learnt it naturally with pure talent. Though still furious, Tonggon couldn't help but ask, how? How did he perform the technique after seeing it just once? With a smug grin, Woonwee replied, if you want, they can go again. Pick another martial art and he'll learn it immediately. Woonwee didn't stop there. Poking at Tonggon's pride, he added, not only are his pockets empty, but also his confidence. Enraged, Tango shouted, wait here, I will be back with more money. As Tonggon stomped away, Woonwee chuckled to himself. This guy is too easy to manipulate. When Tonggon returned, he carried even more coins and began placing bets on additional martial arts. One by one, he demonstrated various techniques. But no matter how advanced they were, Woonwi mastered each within minutes, effortlessly. Hours passed, and Tangon's frustration grew with each loss. Finally, after losing all his coins, Tangon yelled in defeat. Meanwhile, the spirit elders observing commented on the spectacle. One said, "Tangon may be a heretic, but he feels sorry for him." Another replied, "He's unlucky to have crossed paths with their cult heir. Woonwi has tormented many before him." Back at the training ground, Woonwi asked if he got any more martial arts to bet on. Tango groaned. "He's broke. He can't bet anymore." Unfazed, Woonwi said, "Then he'll bet on one last technique. They should make it interesting." Tangon snapped, asking, "What is he talking about?" "He don't have anything left." With a proud grin, Woonwi poured Tangon's remaining coins onto the ground. Tangon, now truly desperate, accused him. "What's next? Is he planning to sell him as a slave?" Woonwi replied, "Nothing so extreme, but there is one technique he haven't shown him yet, the Tempest Dance." Hearing this, Tango's playful demeanor vanished. His eyes grew serious. Tangon, his temper flaring, stood with such intensity that the heat from his mana could almost push Woonwi away. He declared that while other martial arts might be fine, the Tempest Dance was the soul of the Tempest Squad. For Woonwi to speak of it over a bet was disrespectful. With a serious face, he told Woonwi to refrain from speaking of it again. He asked Tangon if his reluctance to teach was because Woonwi lacked the right to learn the Tempest Dance. Tangon replied, of course, Woonwi had the right to learn it, being the son of the clan head. He noted that he had already shown the skill to the clan's first daughter and third son, so teaching Woonwi wasn't an issue. With a serious expression, our MC clarified that he wasn't talking about bloodlines. He was asking whether Tangon believed someone like him could actually learn the martial art. Tangon, brows furrowed in confusion, demanded to know what he meant by that. Woonwi, his anger rising, asked if Tangon saw him as someone who lacked the potential to become a Tempest. He spoke as if making a pledge, challenging Tangon to tell him if he had the right to carry on the Tempest Squad's mission. Upon hearing this, memories flooded Tangon's mind. The Tempest's mission was one of the greatest in their history, but faltered after the squad's dreadful defeat years ago. The Tempest Squad had been reduced to mere zephyrs, losing many of their members before retreating. For 20 years, they had hoped to return to their former glory. Now, to hear such words from young Master Woonwi, who seemed to think he could pick up the mantle, left Tangon shaken. He voiced his thoughts aloud, telling Woonwi that hearing him speak of the Tempest made his heart quiver. Yet, he still couldn't believe Woonwi was truly sincere, especially since the mention of the Tempest Dance as part of a bet. Woonwi, exasperated, muttered to his steed, calling Tangon a pain. He reminded Tangon that if he had asked to learn the Tempest Dance 4 hours ago, Tangon wouldn't have agreed, because he's a lazy master probably planning to run off after showing him the Shadow Shroud step just once. So Woonwi had no choice but to bait him into accepting a wager to prove his worth. Tangon, nodding, admitted that he had heard rumors about Woonwi's change, but now he saw the truth. Woonwi had been hiding his power all along. In fact, it seemed he had been hiding it for years, saving it for this very moment when the clan leader would visit. Our MC's secrecy wasn't lost on Tangon, who chuckled darkly at the realization. The spirit elders, while observing, acted like commentators, marveling at Woonwi's ability to use the yapping technique. They noted that the lad was indeed skilled at it. Woonwi snapped and, using telepathy, warned the spirits that they'd become spirit elixirs if they didn't stop talking. Woonwi then asked Tangon if he would teach him the Tempest Dance or not. Tangon, deep in thought, took his time before replying, but the spirit elders chimed in, predicting that no one could resist Woonwi's sweet words. It was his technique that had managed to win over so many of the demon elders. Our MC, now thoroughly irritated, prepared to turn them all into spirit elixirs, until Tangon relented. "All right," he finally said. "He'll teach him the Tempest Dance. But remember, unlike the other martial arts, this one will be tough to master quickly." Woonwi, full of confidence, said that he would learn it by the end of the day, and that the loser would buy the winner a meal and drinks. Tangon was sure Woonwi would never learn it so fast, stood in his pose, ready to show off the dance and claim victory. Now, the stakes were clear. Aside from Tangon, the other Tempest Squad members didn't interfere with matters concerning the inheritance of the clan head. Even if Woonwi carried on the Tempest legacy, Tangon wouldn't be able to support him as the next heir. But still, Tangon couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility as he prepared to teach Woonwi. Hours later, they were in a restaurant, with empty plates scattered across the table. Tangon, having lost the bet, sighed. Wenwei had, indeed, learned the Tempest dance within a day. Tangon couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in his master's son. Still, Wenwei wasn't even sharing a drink with him, adding to Tangon's frustration. He'd eaten 20 plates of food. The waiter approached, asking if Tangon needed anything else. "Another bottle of alcohol," Tangon said, frustrated. He couldn't bear watching Wenwei eat all his money while he remained sober. A few minutes later, Tangon kept drinking, while Wenwei, deep in thought, realized that the restaurant was the perfect place for his next plan to unfold. Beneath the table, he began making secret gestures, setting the stage for whatever came next. The spirit elders warned him that what he was trying to do was the communication spell of the revered demon god mythos. They cautioned him against leaving such a crucial mark in a place as insignificant as a restaurant, but our MC told them he had to leave the mark, so his fellow demon sect members would know that he was still alive. In another scene, it had been over 10 days already. The spirit spider wondered how long he would sit and spy on Lady Samyong. He sighed, thinking to himself that he hadn't noticed any suspicious meetings in all this time. As he continued to watch, a figure entered Mrs. Samyong's compound. There was no doubt, the person was wearing a Qingsheng sect uniform. The spider was curious about what this person was doing here. After a closer look, he realized the woman was Kyujin, the first daughter of the Tang clan. As she walked inside, the spider muttered to himself, for Kyujin to visit Miss Samyong. That means there must be some news. He sprinted into the apartment to eavesdrop. As he slipped in through the window, he heard Kyujin yelling at her mother for inflicting pain on her stepbrother. She was furious from hearing that her mother has grounded Wenwei in isolation and banned him from eating. That's cruel. Mrs. Samyong calmly responded, saying Kyujin shouldn't worry about that bastard since someone was taking care of him in secret. Not buying her mother's sweet words, Kyujin slammed a hand on the table and said that there's no justifiable reason to mistreat Wenwei. She shouted. How could a mother be so cruel to punish a young boy like that? Not feeding him for 2 months? With disgust, Mrs. Samyong retorted. Why is she getting so worked up over that illegitimate child? Kyujin turned to leave, telling her mother she was tired of hearing her call him that. Does she ever change her views? Kyujin then said that she will reveal the truth about how Mrs. Samyong have been treating him. As she headed for the door, Mrs. Samyong told her to stop, warning that it would cause problems. After Kyujin left, the matriarch muttered, Kyujin's always been too affectionate, ever since she was a child. How is she supposed to take her father's place as clan leader with this kind of behavior? Meanwhile, the spirit spider had overheard everything. He wondered how he would report this to Master Wenwei. This family is a mess, he thought to himself. Just thinking about it gives him headaches, and he's a spider. On the other hand, Miss Samyong was seething that her daughter rebels again, and because of that bastard at that. In a fit of rage, she called for one of her servants. She need to leave immediately. Noticing her movements, the spirit spider speculated that Mrs. Samyong must be going out because of the young leader. She must be going to see the sorcerer. He followed her to figure out who this sorcerer was, who had tried to manipulate young Master Wenwei. In another scene, our MC was still practicing with Master Tangon. He reflected that it had already been 10 days since he told his summoned spirit to keep watch on Mrs. Samyong, but there had been no news since then. He was also worried that the symbol he placed in the restaurant hadn't been communicated to his fellow demon sect members. He wondered what was going on. It's either the rest of the demon cults left, or maybe they can't act because of some restriction. Either way, the situation doesn't look good, Wenwei thought. If you don't hurry and get stronger, there might be problems. Tangon, watching him practice, commented, He's good at keeping up with a weapon. With a proud grin, Wenwei boasted. After all, he's a great student, so of course he's good at everything. Master Tangon gritted his teeth. If he's such a great student, why can't he learn to be humble? He snapped. Tangon then told Wenwei, the Tang clan is famous for its stealthy weapons and poisons. Wenwei listened but thought to himself, all this talk is just building stepping stones for poisons and stealth weapons, but what he really want to learn is the 9 heavenly demon sword, which is split into 2 parts. He mused that if he could learn the weapon techniques of the Tang clan, it would help him master the 9 heavenly demon sword. Although it was possible for him to achieve this dream in his current body with a Dantian core, learning poisons and stealth weapons could come later. Tangon noticed our MC's evil grin. He asked what's with that look, but Woonwee said nothing. Tangon then informed him, Miss Kyujin is here in the mansion. Upon hearing this, Woonwee felt a surge of memory. The former Woonwee, the original owner of the body, had a close bond with Miss Kyujin, even though they were step-siblings. She was the only person in the Nine Dragon Division who treated Woonwee like family, and that made her deeply ingrained in Woonwee's mind. Even after he assumed this body, he still received letters from Kyujin, full of worry and affection. Woonwee, though not much of an expert in relationships, hoped that Kyujin would maintain a good relationship with the owner of the body. But now he was about to make an enemy of their mother, and he wondered if Kyujin would side with him when that happens. But deep down, he knew that siblings always sided with their family. In another scene, young Sam, the servant, bowed to Yunchan, the third heir of the Tang clan. He asked the servant if he has stuck to the recipe for 10 days. The servant replied, of course, he's been feeding Woonwee the poison all this time. Yunchan then dropped a bag of gold as payment and said, well done. The servant thanked him and quickly left. From the shadows, Yunchan called out to a figure, telling him to get rid of the servant. With a smug grin, Yunchan thought to himself, since Woonwee has taken the poison for 10 days, his system should be full of it by now. Even if he realizes it, it'll be too late for him to recover before their father. The Dark Supreme visit. Yunchan mused. Master Tangon isn't putting much effort into teaching Woonwee, but it took even him 8 days to learn the forms of the shadow technique. Yunchan said that there might be a problem with their plan. Once his sister turns 30, she will be the official successor of the Nine Dragons Division. However, she's too affectionate to take on that role. His sister, Kyujin, had joined the Qincheng sect and had not learned the martial arts of the Tang clan, making her unsuitable to be the successor. Therefore, it's only right that he take the position of clan leader in the future. Just then, one of the servants came running in, calling, young master, there's a letter from the White Pavilion. The servant informed him that the letter was from young master Woonwee. Yunchan quickly opened the letter to see the details. When he read it, his expression turned sour. The letter said, let's duel, you fool. Upon reading that, Yunchan snapped to himself, so this illegitimate bastard has already lost his damn mind. He paused, considering it. No, it's impossible for Woonwee to challenge him like this. This must be a scheme, or a poisoned letter meant to kill the reader. He quickly tossed it away, suspecting it was some deadly trick of the Tang clan, but upon second thought, he reconsidered that it doesn't seem to contain any poison. The letter continued, stating that Woonwee wanted to redefine their awkward sibling relationship through this duel. They should let go of any resentment they had and face each other as martial artists, not as step-siblings. Yunchan chuckled to himself. There must be a scheme here. He then told the servants, rip it up. He appreciate the offer, but he's rejecting the duel. 2 hours later, another letter arrived from Woonwee. It contained a single word, coward. Yunchan's face turned red with anger. He knew it. Woonwee is going to keep sending letters like this. He then told the servants not to take any more letters from the White Pavilion. The next morning, just as Yunchan woke up, he saw something written on the wall. Coward. He knew instantly it was from Woonwee. This time, his fury knew no bounds. He ordered one of the servants, go notify the people at the White Pavilion that in 2 days' time, he shall duel with Woonwee at the training grounds. The servants relayed the message to our MC, who smirked with a proud grin.
So, he accepts after all.
Why stall for so long? With a nonchalant expression, Tangon said that this is going to be entertaining to watch. Woonwee smiled, then let's go, shall we? He's sure his little brother won't kill him. In another scene, Kyujin confronted Yunchan, demanding to know if he really wanted to duel against Woonwee. Yunchan, brimming with anger, snapped back and said, that idiotic illegitimate child taunted him first, so take whatever brotherly affection you have to him. Kyujin, stunned, quickly realized it was Woonwee who had suggested the duel. She rushed to the White Pavilion to confront him and ask why. As she approached the pavilion, she could feel spectral and death energy emanating from the place. When she stepped inside, it was even worse. The walls were marked with signs of death, and the entire place felt like the hideout of deranged martial artists. Kyujin froze when she sensed an ominous presence hovering above her. It was definitely spectral energy. She unsheathed her sword and aimed it at the figure. To her shock, it was none other than Woonwee, who blocked her sword just in time, or else his head would have been severed. Kyujin shivered. Realizing she had almost killed her own brother, Woonwi, with a serious face, said, "Well, that's quite a fierce welcome, sister." Kyujin apologized, feeling guilty. She didn't expect him to be the one she was sensing. With a smile, Woonwi reassured her. "It's fine, it's just good to see her." Kyujin then admitted that she's relieved he's all right, but what's with this energy she's sensing from him? She asked if he has fallen into dark arts or demonic practices. Without hiding anything, Woonwi told her, "He've learned poisonous martial arts. Well, it's a curse poison, but in reality, it's just a combination of his demonic mystic energy and poison. It's actually a way to hide his demonic power." Koo-young asked him why he decided to learn curse poison instead. With a sigh, Woonwi said that it was the only poison he could learn without help from the family. But Kyujin didn't seem to buy his explanation at all. Our MC then clarified that as a member of the Tang family, the purpose of obtaining greater power by disregarding morals was natural, so there wasn't an issue with him learning curse poison. He told Kyujin that if she still found it troubling, she could attack him or use her power to stop him. Upon hearing this, Kyujin remarked that Woonwi had really changed, unlike the stepbrother she knew. But the reason Woonwi was doing all this was because he couldn't allow Kyujin to keep trying to protect him like she did with the old Tang Woonwi. He needed to draw a line here. Suddenly, Kyujin began laughing mischievously. She said that now she understood why her mother and little brother were wary of Woonwi. For him to be able to say such words, inspiring the will to fight, it was shocking. Suddenly, even our MC was taken aback, shocked by the change in aura. There was a massive killing intent emanating from Kyujin's body. With an evil grin, she laughed, saying that he had really exceeded her expectations. Kyujin turned out to be one of the soul streaks, a seed of the limit breakers. From her deadly aura, she must be the Azure Spectra streak. Our MC had doubts for a while, but now everything makes sense. At first, he wondered why Kyujin, who was first in line to inherit the clan leader title, suddenly became a disciple of the Kinjang sect. Now he understood what had been happening. The soul streak, which bestows power upon its owner, grants absolute talent, and is considered one of the conditions to become a limit breaker. But like the name suggests, soul streaks are rooted into the soul itself. Moreover, the Azure Spectra streak is a deadly streak that requires fighting to do whatever it takes to win. Kyujin, when in the mood to fight, is nothing short of a murderer who stops at nothing. Woonwi then told her that she was the one complaining about his strange energy not too long ago. But now she herself seemed to have quite the disturbing energy. Kyujin apologized after calming herself down. She said she forgot why she came here for a moment. As she did this, Woonwi was surprised by Koo-young's ability to hold back the killing intent of the Azure Spectra streak so easily. She must really be a strong martial artist. After everything calmed down, Woonwi offered her some tea. She took a sip and commended it for being delicious. Then, Kyujin reached into her bag and said she brought some candied fruits from a nearby shop on her way. She asked Woonwi if he liked them. Deep down, Woonwi didn't particularly like them, but he had to act like he did. In his mind, he told himself that he would stay polite, since it wasn't actually his body. Woonwi couldn't get used to her happy face. It was as if Kyujin was living a double life. He seriously couldn't believe she was the same person who had been exuding so much killing intent earlier. She was more like a demon wearing an angel's coat. Getting straight to the point, he asked her what the main reason was for her visit today. Was it his match against Yunchan tomorrow? Kyujin replied that was part of the reason she came, but actually, she came to apologize. She knew her mother and younger brother had been mistreating him. With a serious face, Woonwi told her that he didn't honestly believe. She thought he would forgive them on her behalf. Kyujin replied, "Yes, of course not." But still, she wanted to apologize. She said that she was really sorry. Woonwi smacked his head and said that no matter what, he was still going to fight Yunchan. Kyujin told him that she was worried he was being pushed into the duel, but now she saw it was actually him who had forced Yunchan to participate. She asked if he was sure about this. Although she understood he was strong now, her junior brother Yunchan was still skilled. While taking a sip from his tea, Woonwi told her he had his own tricks up his sleeves, so she shouldn't worry. Yunchan and Mrs. Samyoung had been feeding Woonwi with lunacy and cinnabar poison, in the hopes of controlling him during the duel and using their sorcery to break him down. But our MC had seen through their tricks right from the onset. Kyujin told him that even if he defeats her brother, the power they had in the household couldn't be disregarded. If Yunshan loses, their mother would do anything to hide the truth. With a smile, Wunwi told her she was worrying too much. Since all of this was orchestrated by him, everything would go as planned. He then invited her to the training ground tomorrow. The next day, at the training ground, the whole place was already filled with a crowd, expecting to watch the thrilling fight between the illegitimate second child Wunwi and the legitimate third child Yunshan. People were already placing their bets, with most of them betting on Yunshan to win, and there were about 500 people ready to watch. Upon seeing the number of people in the arena, Kyujin now understands Wunwi's plan. With the whole place filled with people, all eyes would be on the fight. Even if Yunshan, her junior brother, loses, their mother won't be able to hide the truth. In a part of the arena, Yunshan was angrily waiting for the duel to start. Suddenly, as usual, our MC, being a troublemaker, began using telepathy to taunt Yunshan. He was like, "Our dear Yunshan seems nervous." Upstairs near the arena, Master Tagon and a few members of the Tempest squad came to watch the fight. The huge guy, Tae, told Targon that young Master Wunwi had definitely made a big deal out of this fight. Targon asked if both of them had come to watch the fight as well. They replied that they were actually there for work. With such a big crowd watching the duel between the two successors, they needed to ensure nothing went wrong. With a smile, Tagon asked them who they thought would win the duel. With firm resolve, Tae replied that it was obvious. Sure, Wunwi might have learned some martial arts, but it had only been for 10 days. Another member chimed in, saying it was obviously Yunshan who would win. Tagon agreed, noting that everyone probably thought Yunshan would win, but this duel was initiated by Wunwi. Aren't they curious as to why he would challenge Yunshan? Meanwhile, in the arena, Yunshan was questioning one of his servants. As they spoke, our MC began using telepathy again to taunt Yunshan. Through the telepathy, Wunwi mocked Yunshan, calling him a mama's boy. Calling a grown man like Yunshan a mama's boy was the highest form of disrespect, and our MC was used to stuffs like this. Yunshan became furious, but Wunwi asked if he's anxious because he's still attached to his mommy. Maybe he should go find her and hold hands. Yunshan snapped, telling our MC to shut his mouth. But Wunwi, still taunting, remarked that mama's boys like him should only hear nice things. This infuriated Yunshan, who was boiling with anger. Suddenly, he stood up, and in an instant, he jumped onto the arena stage, demanding Wunwi come out so he could rip his damned mouth open. But our MC wasn't on the stage yet. Instead, he used telepathy from a distance to provoke him. The crowd murmured, wondering what was going on. How was Yunshan being forced onto the stage when he wasn't the one who suggested the duel? As my cameraman zoomed in, Wunwi was seen walking up the stairs with a majestic air. He commented that his little brother was so easily angered and everything seemed to be going his way. Then he bowed and exchanged pleasantries, following the usual formalities of the Tang clan. He announced that he Istang Wunwi of the White Pavilion, and he wished for a good fight. Meanwhile, Kyujin, who had come to watch the duel, observed that Wunwi seemed to have angered Yunshan, using the frequency whispering technique. However, Kyujin thought her brother could have controlled his anger. There were murmurs in the crowd about how Wunwi appeared to be minding his manners, but Yunshan was acting rude. While the outcome of the duel was important, Kyujin noticed Wunwi looked confident in winning. Still, her junior brother was also a rising star of the household and a genius, so Wunwi shouldn't underestimate him. As they faced each other, they kept up the telepathic insults. Yunshan told Wunwi that all he could do was throw low insults. Our MC retorted, asking if Yunshan had come to the stage to fight verbally, or if they could just get to the point of the duel already. In an instance, they took their fighting stances. And bang, the stage was enveloped in smoke from an explosion. The audience murmured, wondering what had just happened. Was it a smoke bomb? They couldn't see anything. It turned out that Yunshan had used a smoke bomb and our MC wasn't expecting this. Despite thinking Wunwi was inferior, Yunshan didn't hesitate to attack from behind. But our protagonist could see through everything. He wasn't expecting less from a Tang warrior. As Yunshan prepared a surprise attack, our MC swiftly used the shadow step technique. Yunshan was surprised, wondering where Wunwi had learned the technique. Wenhui smiled, telling him that Master Tagon had taught him the skill just a few days ago. Yunshan gritted his teeth, shocked to see that Wunwi had learned the shadow stride techniques in just 10 days. Despite being an illegitimate son, he was their father's son after all. Yunshan then told Wunwi that, While the shadow stride step was just footwork, it would lead to the more advanced shadow stride when done properly. Suddenly, Yunshan vanished into the shadows, using a technique that kept him invisible and silent. Our MC commended Yunshan for being a genius, as it was difficult to spot him in the smoke. However, Wunwei had another skill: Dead Man's Eyes. His eyes could even see spirits, so he could easily locate Yunshan. As Yunshan thought he had pulled off the perfect surprise attack, our MC stood still. He knew Yunshan's mastery of the technique wasn't high enough to escape his Dead Man's Eyes. As they fought, the audience was still in the dark, trying to understand what was happening. Upstairs, the three masters could see what was going on due to them being skilled. Taegon remarked that he hadn't expected Wunwei to be so proficient in the shadow step technique. Tae added that young master Yunshan's shadow stride had also improved since the last time they saw him. The fight now seemed like a game of tag, with Yunshan chasing Wunwei, who was evading him. One of the other masters asked if our MC intended to just avoid the attacks until the smoke cleared. Taegon smiled, saying that Wunwei had the skill to make a good counterattack when the time was right. The two other masters were surprised, asking if Taegon had really taught Wunwei something like that. The Taegon they knew was too lazy to teach anyone, but his enthusiasm for Wunwei's growth had clearly caught them off guard. Now back to the fighting stage. Yunshan was already getting pissed off, calling Wunwei a damned bastard who kept on running. And now he noticed that the smoke screen was already dispersing, so he couldn't keep chasing our MC for much longer. Yunshan said to himself that he was going too easy on Wunwei and just wanted to break one of his legs or something. But since Wunwei had brought this upon himself, he had to use one of his hidden skills. He thought that Wunwei might be able to avoid his attacks using the shadow stride step, but as long as he was in this training hall, Wunwei wouldn't be able to avoid this attack. And bang, Yunshan turned into multiples of himself, each with poisonous needles in his hands. He flew high into the sky, all around the stage, and activated his torrential downpour of pure blossom needles. Upon seeing this, Kyujin was like, Yunshan is trying to kill Wunwei. Yet, our MC was still unbothered, like some crazy villain in an anime. He was unfazed despite Yunshan's display. With a smile, he said he was just going to play with his little brother a bit longer, but he guessed it was time to end the fight. Suddenly, as Yunshan unleashed his 1,000 needles, Wunwei activated his lower dantian and created a wind barrier around him. The wind was so powerful that it blew most of the crowd away, and they couldn't see properly. When they looked closer, they were surprised to see Wunwei had used the Tempest skill. Upon seeing this, Kyujin thought to herself, yes, that's the technique Wunwei was learning. She recalled the last 2 days when she visited him. She couldn't really see it well because of the spectra and poison energy, but now she understood. The martial technique Wunwei had mastered was the Tempest Dance. It wasn't enough that our MC mastered the Shadow Step technique in 10 days. He also mastered the Tempest Dance, a technique even Yunshan and the elder sister had found hard to learn. Yunshan yelled that it's impossible. Wunwei replied that thankfully, someone had paired him up with a great teacher, and he better give thanks. In an instant, without too much yapping, our MC used the Tempest Dance and sprinted toward Yunshan, landing a deafening blow that sent him flying off the stage to another zone, shattering the wall and causing him to faint. Upon seeing this, the crowd erupted. Young Master Yunshan lost to Master Wunwei in a single strike. It was definitely a one-shot kill. The murmurs spread. The unexpected had happened. On the other hand, the two masters questioned Taegon and asked how Wunwei had used the Tempest Dance, one of the clan's greatest skills. Taegon replied, "Didn't he tell them Wunwei has what it takes?" They yelled that this is no small matter, and that Taegon shouldn't try to brush it off. Taegon asked them what they thought of Wunwei after seeing the fight. He asked them if they noticed that Wunwei's wind felt similar to the wind they once served. The huge guy, Tae, asked Taegon if he was implying that our MC had the same talents as the head of the clan. Taegon replied, "Not right now, but Wunwei has the talent to create a tempest in 10 days. And he also promised to carry on the Tempest Squad." As they were talking, they thought the fight was over. But Taegon noticed that Wunwei was still making wind, which meant he was still trying to fight. Now our MC looked at Kyujin, his elder stepsister, and asked if she would accept a duel. Upon seeing this, Kyujin's eye went black as the whole crowd gasped. It was then that they recognized her. Wait, she's Wunwei's sister? That means she's Miss Kyujin, the current successor of the clan. They hadn't recognized her since she'd gone to the Qinsheng clan years ago. They thought she must have returned to greet her father, the Dark Supreme. It had been a couple of years, so they didn't recognize her at first. Kyujin was about to turn down the duel with her stepbrother, but the crowd began whispering that since Master Wunwei had learned the Tempest Dance, and Kyujin being the strongest rookie of Sichuan, their spar would be on a completely different level compared to Wenwei's fight with Yun Chan. Everyone was already placing their bets, eager to see the skills of Miss Kyujin. They began hailing her, putting her in a tight spot. As the three masters watched, they said that things seemed to be getting out of hand. The huge guy asked Tangon if Wunwei stood a chance against Kyujin. Tangon replied that Wunwei shouldn't be at a level where he could face Miss Kyujin yet. He wondered what our MC was planning this time around. Just showing off the Tempest Dance after defeating Yun Chan should have solidified his place. But if he were to defeat Miss Kyujin, he might even be able to aim for her position. On the other hand, Miss Kyujin was lost in thought. She wondered what Wunwei was thinking, asking her for a spar. She said to herself that if they were just in their mansion and he asked her for a spar, she wouldn't care to turn down the offer. But in a situation like this, with everyone watching, backing down would bring shame to their family name. As she was thinking, the Azura spectrum within her began to stir, whispering to her. What is she worrying about? Her heart craves this fight. Stop overthinking. Trust your instincts and fight. Wunwei interrupted her inner struggle, his tone calm yet teasing. Isn't this too much deliberation for a spar? This isn't life or death. Relax and enjoy the fight. Something in his words clicked. Kyujin's expression darkened, and with a sudden leap, she landed on the stage. The crowd erupted. She introduced herself formally as Tang Kyujin, heir to the Nine Dragon family and disciple of the Qincheng sect. I hope this will be a good match, she said with a sharp bow. In return, our MC introduced himself. Wunwei, second child of the Tang clan, trained under Tangon of the Fierce Wind Knights. The crowd was ecstatic. Wunwei joked that his stepsister seemed to be having fun. With a proud grin, Kyujin replied, Of course, she haven't been this excited in years. Her expression turned sinister. It's been so long since she could fight to her heart's content. Unsheathing her sword, she radiated an unmistakable bloodlust. The battle began with a clash. Wunwei used the early Windblade seal to block her initial attack, surprising Kyujin. She smirked. Interesting. If he can block that, then she don't need to hold back anymore. As her attacks grew fiercer, Wunwei realized he couldn't keep up with her speed. He activated Shadow Shroud arts to dodge. Kyujin was surprised that our MC could imitate her brother's techniques. His proficiency still needs work, though. Wunwei asked her if violence always this prominent in Qincheng's sword arts. Kyujin shot back. This isn't Qincheng's style. She said that since Wunwei had been hiding his true powers from her, she's also hiding her trump card. With a deadly serious tone, Wunwei declared, If you want to see my true energy, prepare yourself. And bang, he unleashed the venomous dragon cultivation technique, combining it with the Spectra Dragon Unbound. The sheer force rattled the arena like a storm. Kyujin's reaction? Pure excitement. Her eyes gleamed with madness. She said that venomous aura, that spectral energy, yes, that's what she wanted to fight. With a wicked smile, she told him, she'll let him strike first. He shouldn't disappoint her. Wunwei's thoughts raced as he observed her transformed demeanor. Her entire atmosphere has shifted. She's even more dangerous now. All the killing intents of the azure spectral streak were tied together with her sword. Strangely enough, it felt as if our MC was staring at a demon wearing the clothes of a beautiful angel. But anyway, there was no reason for Wunwei to refuse when he had been offered the first strike. And bang, he sprinted forward, aiming to gain control of the battle flow with a single strike. But as he attacked her, Kyujin dodged easily. She remarked that the Tempest's full blow, which had defeated her younger brother earlier, was now much more powerful. But it was too obvious. In an instant, she swung her sword in a direction that could have decapitated Wunwei if he had been slower. As she relentlessly attacked, not giving him a moment to rest, she commented that the moves of the Tempest Dance were too big. She added that when he faced someone stronger, he should learn to be more careful. It felt like a lecture, and Wunwei, to his credit, thanked her for the advice. Since singular attacks weren't working, Wunwei decided to combine multiple attacks. He wanted to create something powerful enough to take down someone like Kyujin, who was on a higher level. He activated a skill known as the 12 Beats of the Violent Tiger, incorporating it into his Tempest Dance. Kyujin observed his stance and immediately recognized the technique. She was genuinely impressed that he had learned the 12 Beats of the Violent Tiger as well. When Woonwee attacked, she blocked every move with ease, almost as if he were feeding her jelly beans. Despite increasing his speed to keep up with her, she noticed his struggle. She remarked that while she understood his attempts to maintain the flow of his attacks, if his opponent gained even a moment of space, it would spell trouble. Suddenly, Kyujin used the quenching sword style, lightning severing quick blade. Bang! Multiple blitzes surrounded Woonwee. Luckily, he managed to block it without severe injuries, though he stumbled backward. As he moved, he wondered if he had attacked too rashly. But mid-air, he decided to use this as an opportunity. Spotting an opening in Kyujin's defense, he dived in to exploit it. Meanwhile, Yunshan, the clan's infamous mama's boy, woke up from a long nap. A servant rushed to tend to the young master. Yunshan turned his gaze to the fight between Woonwee and his elder sister. He couldn't believe his eyes. Not only had Woonwee knocked him out earlier, but now he was matching Kyujin evenly. Furious, Yunshan asked if his mother had returned. The servant replied no. Yunshan muttered that there was no way his sister would lose. But as the fight dragged on, he realized the longer Woonwee held his ground, the higher his value would rise in the clan. The crowd began hailing Woonwee for standing his ground against Kyujin, the mighty azure spectral streak. Yunshan clenched his fists. If his sister lost, he couldn't let it be the end. Back in the arena, fierce blows continued to be exchanged. Even a spiritual demon wouldn't dare to intervene in their battle. Woonwee saw an opening and went for it, unaware that Kyujin could fight with her bare hands as well as her sword. Kyujin smiled, explaining that while she left 5 years ago to learn the teachings of Kuncheng, she had also trained in the martial arts of the Tang clan. Woonwee muttered to himself, "So this is the power of the azure spectral streak." Her attacks were deadly, forcing him to dodge and defend at every turn. The stress was overwhelming. His body was growing numb, and bile rose in his throat. Suddenly, Kyujin stopped and complimented him. She noted that while his offensive moves were standard, his ability to read and dodge opponents was exceptional, like a seasoned warrior. She was impressed but seemed unaware that in Woonwee's previous life as a member of the demon sect, reading his opponent's moves and dodging had been a matter of survival. However, Woonwee realized that focusing solely on martial arts caused him to forget an important lesson: adaptability. He resolved to merge his instincts with martial techniques. Kyujin noticed his expression shift and smiled, intrigued by what he would try next. With a bang, she sprinted forward, her shadows darting in every direction. Her barrage of attacks avoided vital spots, reflecting her reluctance to hurt him. Woonwee observed her weakness. Kyujin was holding back out of concern for him. Grateful but determined, Woonwee decided to exploit her hesitation. He used the 12 beats of the violent tiger, combining it with the tiger claw breaker. Kyujin recognized the attack but noticed something different. It was stronger and deadlier than before. The wind around Woonwee began to restrict her movements, signaling the power of the technique. Realizing the danger, Kyujin braced herself, but it was too late. Woonwee gathered all his energy and unleashed it. And bang, the entire area exploded, engulfing the battlefield in smoke. The crowd and the three masters watching were stunned. No one could believe what had just happened. As the smoke cleared, all eyes remained fixed on the arena. The three masters were gathered, discussing the events that had just unfolded. One of them turned to Tagon and asked if Miss Kyujin would be fine. Tangon nodded and replied that she would be. Their surprise wasn't just because young Master Woonwee had shown far more skill than expected, but also due to the lights they had just witnessed emanating from Kyujin. Back on the stage, Woonwee spoke up. He pointed out that this situation seemed rather unfair. After a brief pause, she asked Woonwee if he had also noticed the light. Kyujin admitted she had tried to hide it until she could draw out his trump card, but if he had already noticed, then it was inevitable. The crowd murmured as realization dawned. The light emanating from Kyujin was undoubtedly sword ki. This meant she had entered an early peak-level martial art. She had been holding back since all this time. Kyujin said that Woonwee might know this already, but since she had begun using sword ki, the fight could no longer drag on. With a resigned sigh, Woonwee agreed, remarking that it was clear she had deliberately drawn the fight out against someone a stage weaker than her. He added dryly that such behavior was quite rude. Kyujin smirked and admitted she had wanted to enjoy the fight a little longer while probing for his hidden techniques. Woonwee said to himself that the fight would definitely end in the next exchange. His early wind sword seal, which he had been using to parry her blade, wouldn't hold against Kyujin's quenching sword combined with sword ki. Such a devastating attack could slice through the air itself. Wunwi couldn't reveal his mystic arts, as it would expose his demonic skill. He realized he had only one option. Interrupting his thoughts, Kyujin noticed his hesitation. She urged him to continue the fight. Wunwi gestured for her to go ahead, and she raised her sword, now blazing with sword ki. He noted, with grim certainty, that she was aiming for a single decisive strike. That meant he would also have to unleash his strongest attack. Channeling energy into his hands, Wunwi combined his spectral energy with his Tempest Dance technique, forming a move called Thundering Wind Canyon. Although unsure if it would be enough to face Kyujin, an early peak-level martial master, he had no other choice. With a deafening bang, Wunwi launched his attack just as Kyujin unleashed hers. Their powerful strikes tore through the air, threatening to decide the battle. Meanwhile, in the audience, Yunshan watched his sister's overwhelming power and felt disheartened. He muttered that the gap between them had grown even wider, though he was certain Wunwi wouldn't stand a chance after this clash. Back on stage, Wunwi had not immediately attacked. Instead, he waited for the precise moment when the sword ki left Kyujin's blade, rendering it an ordinary sword. With perfect timing, Wunwi's Thundering Wind Canyon shattered Kyujin's sword into pieces. The crowd gasped as Wunwi landed, unable to move his hand. Although he had expected such a result, breaking Kyujin's sword was usually a mark of victory. However, he knew the fight wasn't over. Kyujin, possessor of the Azure Spectral Soul Streak, wouldn't stop because of a broken sword. Similarly, Wunwi wasn't about to give up. With her sword shattered and his hand injured, both fighters prepared to pour all their remaining energy into one final strike. As they prepared to unleash their last attacks, the three masters debated whether they should intervene. They shouted that the young fighters were too excited and could seriously hurt themselves. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. A powerful presence entered the fray. Before Kyujin and Wunwi could land their final blows, a figure moved at lightning speed, stopping them. The mysterious figure's commanding voice cut through the tension, declaring that both fighters had played long enough. The crowd fell silent as Kyujin and Wunwi froze, shocked. The figure stepped into the light, revealing himself as the head of the Nine Dragon family, the Dark Matrix Tang Hosan. Kyujin immediately bowed her head, greeting her father with respect. Meanwhile, Wunwi was stunned, thinking to himself, "So this is the head of the Nine Dragon family?" He quickly bowed as well, still processing the man's overwhelming presence. The spirit elders informed Wunwi to tread carefully, because this man was a formidable force, both tough to deal with and immensely powerful. They mentioned that after the disbandment of the Tempest Squad, they had assumed Tang Hosan would stop improving at such an incredible rate. But contrary to their expectations, even without the squad, he had become even stronger. Wunwi thought to himself that he now understood. He thought Tang Hosan is just as strong as an elder in the heavenly demon cult. Little did Wunwi know that Tang Hosan was so powerful that he would lose to him if they fought head-on in his past life. Noticing Wunwi's gaze, Tang Hosan, in a thick voice, asked if he was dissatisfied with something. Did Wunwi have something to say to him? The intensity in his tone was unmistakable. RMC, maintaining his composure, replied that he was merely worried. With a smirk, he remarked that his mediocre martial arts skills might insult Tang Hosan's eyes. The crowd froze. Gasps echoed through the room as everyone, including Kyujin, was stunned, not because of what Wujin said, but because he dared to talk back to the clan leader. Tang Hosan is the realest and strongest man of the Tang clan, with his presence sending chills through the hall. With a dismissive tone, he said Wunwi wasn't entirely wrong. Watching the duel hadn't been particularly entertaining for him. Still, he admitted he had heard that Wunwi's personality had shifted slightly. Honestly, it's better than what he expected. But then his tone shifted sharply as he roared his disappointment. Yunshan was scared, thinking his father was disappointed in him for losing the duel. But he said he was disappointed at Tang Gon, Tang Te, and Tang Ji. Startled, they descended from the upper floors, landing swiftly and bowing low in apology. The tension was thick as the Dark Supreme scolded them for reacting too slowly. Next time, he barked, "Don't let that happen again." They quickly echoed, "Yes, sir." The sight of three great masters bowing like ants to the Dark Supreme stunned everyone. It was a testament to just how powerful he truly was. The Dark Supreme ordered the trio to disperse the crowd and handle the remaining tasks. They responded in unison and set to work. On the other hand, Woonwi noticed Kyujin looking dejected. He asked why. She hesitated before admitting she felt like she wasn't good enough to earn their father's attention. Woonwi laughed lightly and said, "That's just how he is. He'll suddenly take an interest if you impress him, but just as easily disregard you if you fail his expectations." Kyujin sighed, acknowledging this as the truth. She muttered an apology, admitting she wished Tang Ho-san were a better father. Sensing the conversation growing too heavy, Woonwi quickly changed the topic, asking if she was hungry. He suggested they grab a drink after cleaning up. Later that evening, Kyujin was having the time of her life, already downing her 5th jar of wine. Our MC, unable to resist teasing her, remarked that anyone watching might think she hadn't eaten in days. "Does the Kuncheng sect starve her or something?" Kyujin laughed and replied that while they fed her, it was mostly vegetables due to her Taoist practices. She grumbled that she should be eating meat and drinking wine, not nibbling on leaves like a rabbit. That's one thing she hated about Taoists. Woonwi agreed, chuckling, and poured her another drink. Then, with a sly grin, he leaned in and asked her to tell him about this martial arts brother of hers from the sect. Kyujin's cheeks flushed red. She demanded to know why he was asking about him. Woonwi smirked, reminding her that she mentioned him countless times in her letters. How could he not be curious? Every time she write to him, it's martial arts brother this, martial arts brother that. She's practically obsessed. Kyujin, flustered, waved him off and told him to stop teasing her. But Woonwi wasn't done. Didn't she say he's visiting when the clan leader arrives? Woonwi said he need to know more about him so he can treat him appropriately, he said with a mischievous grin. Kyujin immediately assumed a defensive stance, accusing Woonwi of being corrupted by the Tang clan's wickedness. Our MC laughed, but soon turned serious. He speculated that the martial arts brother, Li Xiaosan, a disciple of the Qinsheng sect, might be coming for more than just a casual visit. Rumors were swirling that the Dark Supreme was planning to create another special squad like the Tempest Squad of the past. If true, it would have significant implications for all the sects and clans in Sichuan. Woonwi believed the Qinsheng sect might be sending Li Xiaosan to investigate cautiously, as they couldn't blindly trust Kyujin. Or perhaps they had an entirely different purpose for his visit. Slipping away from his thoughts, Woonwi waved at someone in the distance. Curious, Kyujin wondered if it was a friend of his. To her surprise, it was Master Tagon. While grumbling, Tagon approached and scolded them, remarking that they could have been gentler during their earlier training session. It took them so long to fix the damages it caused. When she realized it was Tagon, Kyujin quickly stood up and bowed in shock. She scolded Woonwi, asking why he hadn't told her Targon was coming. Turning to Targon, she respectfully invited him to have a seat. Our mischievous MC, as usual, interrupted, suggesting they all have a drink instead. They poured their drinks, clicked their cups together, and shared some light-hearted banter. Meanwhile, Kyujin was aghast at his casual demeanor with Master Targon. She whispered to Woonwi, asking if he even realized the kind of person Targon was. She explained that Targon was their father's martial arts brother, and had saved their father, the Dark Supreme, during the Qinsheng Bloodbath War. He had even been appointed to a significant position afterward. Feeling the weight of Kyujin's words, Woonwi sarcastically tried to act more serious. He bowed to Targon and apologized, acknowledging his past rudeness, even during their training. Kyujin, proud of his attempt, praised him for showing respect. However, Targon was far from impressed. He found Woonwi's behavior insincere and snapped at Kyujin, accusing her of making Woonwi act unnaturally. The air grew tense as Targon, visibly disgusted, dismissed Woonwi's apology, claiming it was ruining his appetite. Eventually, the group returned to their feast. Amid the drinking, Woonwi, now more serious, reflected on his recent duel with Kyujin and Yunchan. He realized he had caught the attention of the old Tempest squad, including Tang Ho-san and Kyujin. His real worry, however, was his stepmother, Lady Samyung. He feared she might try to harm him before the Dark Supreme settled things. In another scene, a carriage rolled through a dense forest. On it, the spirit spider worried about their destination. He feared Woonwi might think he had run off if they ventured too far. Suddenly, the carriage stopped. The spirit spider wondered if they had arrived, but his thoughts were interrupted as Lady Samyung stepped out. She instructed the servants to proceed, speculating whether the temple master would be present. Hearing her mention the temple master, the spirit spider's suspicion deepened. He wondered if the temple is the person trying to poison Woonwi all along. As they approached the temple's ominous entrance, he felt a surge of yin energy. It sent chills down his spine. Why would Lady Samyang come to such a deadly place? Suddenly, an eerie figure greeted Lady Samyang, announcing that the temple master had sent her. Lady Samyang expressed surprise, marveling at the temple master's foresight. The spirit spider, observing from the shadows, recognized the figure as a Jiangshi, a zombie retaining memories and critical thinking skills. Controlling such a being required immense power. This wasn't an ordinary sorcerer's dwelling. Inside the temple master chanted incantations, beseeching the gods for more oracles. When informed of Lady Samyang's arrival, he permitted her entry. She greeted him with a slight bow, but the temple master wasn't one for pleasantries. He accused her of coming only when in need, highlighting her greed. Lady Samyang countered, claiming her devotion exceeded that of anyone else. To prove her point, she presented 2 crates of silver, an amount equivalent to 1 billion in modern currency. The temple master, intrigued by her offering, asked how he could assist her. Lady Samyang reminded him of her previous request to brainwash Wunwi. However, circumstances had changed. She now needed a faster, more reliable solution. She wanted Wunwi turned into a Jiangshi, a zombie. The spirit spider, hidden nearby, was horrified. He knew this was a dire threat, and resolved to inform Wunwi immediately. He said to himself that for the temple master to be able to easily turn a live person to zombie, then Wunwi will have a hard time defending himself. But as he darted away, zombie beasts emerged from the forest, blocking his path. These abominations, stitched together from corpses, were undoubtedly the temple master's creations. The spirit spider realized the temple master belonged to the Black Bone Ghost Valley, a faction tied to the heavenly demon divine courts. The temple master, sensing an intruder, smirked as he informed Lady Samyang that someone had followed her. She was shocked, having failed to notice the spy. The temple master, with an ominous grin, remarked that whoever was behind Wunwi might be more troublesome than expected. Frustrated but determined, Lady Samyang promised an additional box of silver for swift action. Lady Samyang told the temple master that if he could accomplish the task, she would add an additional box. She then stated that since she was paying more, she wanted the mastermind behind Wunwi exposed, and the concubine's child transformed into a proper live zombie. The temple master, with an evil smile, agreed readily. Now they would chase down the mastermind who had so graciously come to them. Without hesitation, the temple master summoned a figure, and it materialized before him. This was one of the infamous beasts known as the Death Warriors. The temple master ordered the Death Warrior to capture the wraiths that had escaped and to hunt down the sorcerer controlling them. The warrior simply nodded, then leaped away in search of his targets. From a rooftop, the Death Warrior muttered to himself that the beast zombie guarding the forest hadn't yet caught the spirit spider. He must be an agile one. Then he summoned more beasts to assist in the search. Meanwhile, the spirit spider, fleeing for its life, sensed a menacing and oppressive energy closing in. Suddenly, a colossal winged monster caller Guadio appeared, snatching the spider mid-flight. As the spider struggled, it hoped that Wunwi will survive. In the White Pavilion's training zone, Wunwi stood on the training grounds and asked Kyujin if she wasn't planning to return to her chambers. Kyujin, nonchalant, replied that the weather was pleasant, so she'd stay until she sobered up a bit. Wunwi, deep in thought, realized that Yunchan, who had suffered a crushing defeat, and Lady Samyang, whose schemes had been foiled, would stop at nothing to harm him now. He suspected Kyujin was also aware of this. Determined to improve, Wunwi resolved to train and instructed Kyujin not to disturb him. The spirit elders, acting as commentators, admired Kyujin's upright character despite her Qingsheng sect origins. They marveled that someone so virtuous could hail from mischievous Tang clan. Their musings even extended to Lady Samyang, whom they humorously referred to as a girl, a stark reminder of their ancient age. As our MC was about training, he stopped abruptly. The spirit elders asked what was wrong. Wunwi admitted that something felt different after his duels. Previously, there had been a delay between his thoughts and actions during martial arts practice. Now, however, the delay was diminishing. One elder, claiming to have been a renowned instructor in the Heavenly Demon Court, offered to assess Wunwi's condition. After a thorough inspection, he asked if Wunwi had ever heard of accumulated merit. Unsurprisingly, Wunwi hadn't. The elder explained that unlike internal energy, which could be developed through consistent training, accumulated merit depended on one's actions and essence. The elder suggested that Wunwi's current improvements might be attributed to the harmonization of his past life's accumulated merit with that of his present body. This newfound synergy allowed Wunwi to adapt more efficiently to martial arts, with his assimilation rate already at 40%. As this rate increased, so too would his mystic power. ultimately restoring him to his past life's peak. Kyujin observed and noticed Woon-wee gained passion in martial arts unlike before. Her heart ached at the changes in him. She knew her mother, Lady Samyung, wouldn't wait for Woon-wee to solidify his position. She'd strike before his power grew unassailable. As these thoughts consumed her, Kyujin suddenly felt a deadly presence. The azure spectra within her warned of an approaching threat. The area was soon enveloped in ghost fog, a sinister mist that blocked perception. The spirit elders identified it, but Woon-wee, grinning confidently, deduced the culprit. From the cinnabar poison scent and the fog's composition, he declared that the sorcerer targeting him had finally taken the bait. Within the fog, the Death Warrior emerged, relishing the hunt. According to the temple master's instructions, his primary targets were the mastermind behind the concubine's child, Woon-wee. He speculated that the sorcerer was using Woon-wee as a tool to execute advanced mystic art. Following the trail left by the spirit spider, the Death Warrior was astonished to find it leading directly to Woon-wee. Puzzled, the Death Warrior began to suspect that Woon-wee might be more involved than anticipated. Little did he know, there was no mastermind pulling the strings. Woon-wee was orchestrating everything himself. As the fog thickened and the hunt intensified, the Death Warrior prepared to eliminate his prey, unaware of the formidable. On the other hand, Woon-wee was feigning ignorance, yelling, "What is this fog? He can't see anything." But deep down, he was smiling mischievously, waiting for the Death Warrior to attack. He was trying to deceive his enemy into thinking he was weak. Meanwhile, the Death Warrior felt that the sorcerer behind Woon-wee might be nearby, but he couldn't find anyone. Since his second target was also Woon-wee, the concubine's child, he decided to kill him, believing that doing so would force the mastermind controlling Woon-wee to reveal themselves. As he approached stealthily, the Death Warrior assumed Woon-wee wouldn't be able to sense anything because of the ghost fog. If Woon-wee stayed still, he planned to quickly turn him into a zombie with all his limbs intact. Suddenly, as he was getting closer, Kyujin appeared from the fog with her aura blazing. Before the Death Warrior could even comprehend what was happening, she attacked him with a loud bang, sending him flying. As they fought, Woon-wee observed the scene with a mischievous grin and thought to himself, "Wow, it's impressive. Whoever sent this guy must be serious. Sending a death swordsman and a guadio, high-ranking warriors no less, they really want him dead." The spirit elders informed Woon-wee that whoever sent the Death Warrior was definitely from the Blackbone Ghost Valley. They added that the Death Warrior seemed to be at least a third-rank swordsman. They wondered if things would go as Woon-wee planned this time. Woon-wee smirked and thought, it's going to be hard for someone as strong as Kyujin to lose to a zombie of the same rank as her. But the problem is, this Jiangshi was sent by Lady Samyung, Kyujin's own mother. Will Kyujin destroy him as her Taoist duty demands, or will her feelings get in the way? Woon-wee can't meddle in this. It's all up to her now. The Death Warrior was caught off guard by Kyujin's attacks, muttered to himself, "Isn't this Qin Sheng's sword energy? Why is a Taoist here? Wait, this must be Miss Tang Kyujin. But why is she here of all places?" He grew even more confused, knowing Lady Samyung herself had sent him to kill Woon-wee. Desperate, he yelled at Kyujin, telling her to hear him out, insisting she wasn't his target. But Kyujin snapped, stating she had no intention of listening to the words of a demon. She launched another attack, shouting, "Die again, you dirty zombie!" The Death Warrior dodged, grumbling. She's really trying to send him back to the afterlife twice. He realized he was in serious trouble as Kyujin's ferocious attacks kept coming. Frustrated, the Death Warrior decided to stop holding back. He muttered, "Fine. If he's going to die anyway, he might as well fight seriously." Then, with a roar, he broke the death seal on his body and activated the ghost enhancement technique. His body grew to 5 times its size, his red eyes glowing fiercely as he transformed into a giant. Seeing this, Kyujin exclaimed, "What the hell?" The Death Warrior delivered a heavy attack, as powerful as a mountain crashing down, but he held back slightly, warning Kyujin to stand down so she wouldn't get hurt. He told her this was all her mother's plan, but Kyujin, already aware of the truth, refused to waver. She declared, she knew her mother sent him, but she must defeat the Death Warrior and uncover the mastermind behind all this. She needed to stop her mother from going down the wrong path. With that, she used her anti-demonic energy to reflect the Death Warrior's attack. Annoyed, the Death Warrior muttered, "Stubborn woman. If only she weren't so hard-headed, this fight would have ended by now." He realized that the longer he fought Kyujin, the more the ghost fog would weaken, leaving him at a disadvantage. Desperate, he summoned the beast monster Guadio to attack Woon-wee. But Woon-wee was unfazed. With a smile, he said out loud, "Ah, finally." The Death Warrior is using the Guadio. Took him long enough. He was starting to fall asleep waiting for this. And bang, the beast monster launched toward Wunhui with blinding speed, aiming to attack him. But Wunhui, as calm as ever, acted like the hideous beast was just another noisy nuisance in the night. Suddenly, using his dead man's eyes, he commanded the beast to bow its head. To amplify the drama, he activated his skill known as Purple Eyes, evil ghost taunts, and bang, the beastly bird screeched violently before crashing onto the ground with a thunderous thud. Wunhui blinked, his voice laced with sarcasm as he muttered that he only asked it to bow its head, not to take a nosedive. The spirit elders, ever the peanut gallery, cheered loudly, exclaiming, "Our Excellence, Our Excellence!" Their enthusiasm filled the air as if they had been the ones controlling the beast. They acknowledged the Gudiao didn't die after all. Its sturdy body could endure a lot. It must have taken an extraordinary amount of resources to create such a monster. The elders continued, blaming the foolishness of the beast's creators for daring to attack their young master. Wunhui, however, rolled his eyes and reminded them it was his power at play, not theirs, so there was no need for their over-the-top celebrations. With a flicker of menace in his gaze, our MC ordered the Gudiao to rise and presented it with two choices. He asked if the beast preferred to fight the Death Warrior or him. The Gudiao, catching the murderous gleam in Wunhui's eyes, screeched in terror and sprinted toward the Death Warrior instead. The Death Warrior, already struggling with his opponent, looked bewildered as his own beast turned against him. What the heck? Why is my monster attacking me? He yelled in disbelief. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. If he couldn't control his creature, someone else must have taken over. His thoughts spiraled. If the Gudiao was under another's command, then the sorcerer responsible must be nearby, and that sorcerer was powerful enough to threaten him. As panic brewed in his mind, Kyujin let out a dark laugh before leaping through the air. While the Death Warrior was distracted, she delivered a devastating slash, severing his left arm. The impact resounded like thunder, forcing him to retreat. But as he stumbled away, he questioned her motives aloud. Why didn't she finish him off? Is she holding back because of her mother, Lady Samyang? Kyujin smirked wickedly. Hold back? Oh no. She planned to shred him to pieces so he can truly repent for his sins. And then she'll kill him, slowly. Her sinister aura grew darker, and the Death Warrior's jaw dropped. What the hell? Is that the face of a Taoist who saves others? She's more demonic than the demons themselves. While he stood frozen, the Gudiao capitalized on his distraction, lunging at him and clawing his face, its talons scraping deep into his eye. The Death Warrior howled in agony, staggering back as blood trickled down his cheek. Kyujin, observing the chaos, muttered to herself, confused about why the beast had suddenly turned rogue. Nonetheless, she knew the ghost fog had to be cleared, or reinforcements would never arrive. Kyujin assumed a battle stance and activated her skill, world-style evil extermination slash. The move shredded the ghost fog, revealing the battlefield clearly. As the mist faded, the Death Warrior cursed. The ghost enhancement technique that made him larger and more powerful had been dispelled. Realizing his vulnerability, he searched desperately for an opening to escape. And bang, he sprinted toward his severed arm, hoping to retrieve it. But Kyujin was unimpressed as she shouted, "Where do you think you're going?" She chased after him, but the Death Warrior suddenly muttered the word explode. With a deafening blast, his severed hand transformed into a mini-bomb, forcing Kyujin to retreat momentarily. "Damn it, he's full of tricks," she growled, watching as he threw smoke bombs one after the other, vanishing from her sight. Frustrated, she yelled to Wunhui, warning him to stay alert because the Death Warrior might strike again from the shadows. Wunhui, however, told her not to pursue him. Kyujin gawked at him in disbelief. Is he seriously saying they shouldn't kill the zombie that just tried to tear them apart? Wunhui nodded calmly. Yes, they need to play this strategically. That guy's just a Death Warrior, but he infiltrated the Tang clan's main estate and spread ghost fog everywhere. That means he's strong enough to use an enchantment. If he feels cornered, he might activate a return talisman and escape instantly. Kyujin frowned, but Wunhui continued. Right now, they don't have the strength to defeat a zombie of his caliber while he's inside his own enchantment zone. But if they can force him out of it, they'll uncover the mastermind behind the Jiangxi, who dared to attack the 9 Dragons division of the Tang clan. Kyujin, with sweat running down her spine, said that if what Wunhui said was true, then the zombie they were dealing with was sent by their mother. She then asked, what will he do if she decided to follow their mother's will? Wunhui, with his aura shifting, replied, in that case, he'll simply become the loser in this game of wits. After all, he can't really fight against all of them. Isn't that what it means to be part of the Tang clan? Upon hearing this, Kyujin was shocked and stunned at the same time. For someone, an illegitimate child whom they had been grooming, to say something like this? It was clear that Woonwi had changed after enduring so many hardships. The Tang clan, a group full of lies and deceit, had left its mark. But Kyujin silently promised herself that she would make Woonwi understand that not all of them were evil. She only needed to push a little more, just a little more, and help him. As Kyujin was lost in thought, the beast, Jiangxi, began screeching. Surprised to see it still around, she wondered why it hadn't left yet. With an evil grin, she planned to deal with it. Meanwhile, the Death Warrior, as strong as he was still running for his life. After a while, he stopped and muttered, "He can't believe he's running away after failing his objective. Even if he reattaches his arm after losing to Kyujin, the security guard around the Nine Dragons division will get stricter. His master won't tolerate this failure." In pain and anger, he yelled, "Damn it, if it weren't for that cursed woman Kyujin." But before he could finish, our MC appeared beside him out of nowhere and said, if he's going to rest, he should have gone further. But here he is, just outside the Tang estates. The Death Warrior turned around, stunned. Despite running at full speed, with the swiftness of light, how did this guy track him down so fast? The bastard son. How did Woonwi manage to follow him? He wondered if the sorcerer behind Woonwi is pulling the strings. He thought so. But if Woonwi was just a puppet, then this was the chance to capture him. Doing so would not only uncover the truth, but also reveal the sorcerer's identity. But then, the Death Warrior noticed a change in Woonwi's aura and saw spectral energy emanating from him. He thought it must be the sorcerer giving Woonwi this energy and controlling him. Woonwi then said he wasn't impressed. He understood that Lady Samyung is getting desperate. But to think that someone from the Tang clan would ally with the Blackbone Ghost is truly disappointing. The Death Warrior was shocked and asked, how does he know about that? But Woonwi just smiled. Who knows? He replied nonchalantly. Suddenly, the Death Warrior was frightened as Woonwi began changing his form. He instantly recognized the ominous figure. Is that the evil ghost war robe? Everyone in the Blackbone Ghost Valley knew about it 10 years ago. The sorcery weapon which the heir of Heavenly Demon, Yun Woonwi, used to cause chaos. But his confusion only grew. He heard the Heavenly Demon heir was dead, so how was Woonwi able to wield such spectral energy? Woonwi was like, does this guy really think he'll answer his questions? Instead, why not the Death Warrior answer his questions? The Death Warrior shot back and said he won't answer him, Woonwi's questions too. With a smirk, our MC said, of course he knows he won't answer, but we'll talk once you're dead. The Death Warrior was shaking, then muttered to himself, if this guy is really the demon god, he might die with a single blow. It will be over for him if Woonwi used mystic arts or the power of the Phantom King. As Woonwi launched his attack, the Death Warrior braced himself for some magical force, but to his surprise, Woonwi used martial arts instead. And bang, the punch landed. The Death Warrior's face shifted as he was sent flying backward, blood spilling from his mouth. As he fell, he gasped, what the hell? That was the Tempest Dance, the secret art of the Nine Dragons division. How does he know how to use it? The Death Warrior was still reeling from the shock when he saw Woonwi use martial arts. How is this possible? He wondered aloud. He laughed and said, if Woojin is using martial arts, then he's not the demon cult heir. The cult heir he know can't use martial arts. The demon court heir could wipe out a dead swordsman like him with a flick of his finger. Suddenly, Woonwi used the 100,000 chains, but the Death Warrior managed to dodge it. Upon seeing this, Death Warrior muttered to himself that this weapon belongs the demon court heir and created by him. His confusion deepened. Could Woonwi actually be the demon court heir? Woonwi deliberately missed his target, making the Death Warrior even more confused. How is this guy using martial arts combined with mystic arts and even the demon court heir's 1,000 chains binding? He thought the demon cult heir died years ago. How is Woonwi doing this? Noticing the Death Warrior's confusion, Woonwi said, it's fine if he's confused, but does he really have time to worry about that? The Death Warrior, realizing he couldn't drag the fight out any longer, thought, if he don't finish this quickly, Wind Squad will spot him, and once they know his identity, he won't be able to run. Desperation struck him as he plotted to silence Woonwi to cover his tracks, preventing anyone from tracing him back to his master. But a chill ran down his spine as he wondered, what if Woonwi really is the demon cult heir? That would be a problem. Woonwi waited patiently, wondering how a villain could overthink during a fight. Do they really promote anyone to be a dead swordsman these days? He mused with a smirk.